Okay. Hi. Thanks for meeting with me today. Who are you and what do you teach?
My name is Faye. I am a lecturer at the University Writing Program at the University of California, Davis. I teach upper division courses, mostly in science writing and health science writing.
Thank you, Sarah. How is your grading scheme different than the traditional model of grading that most of us have experienced as students ourselves and that many of us use in the classes we teach?
I use contract grading, which is different from traditional grading. And it's a system that checks that the students do the work instead of grading each assignment and each task that they're doing. So they're getting complete, and all of those completes then lead to a certain grade.
So, do you put grades on the papers?
No, I do not.
Um, do you use points in the learning management system?
No, I only use complete and complete.
Okay. Can you talk a little bit more about how you do the complete and incomplete?
Yes, so every week students have deadlines for different tasks, mostly pre-work for towards the assignments. And all they get from me is complete and then feedback. Oh, an incomplete, and then, oh, here, this is what's happening. Usually the incomplete is because they're missing a part of the assignment or they misunderstood the instructions. And so I just tell them, fix it so that I can give you complete.
Some instructors might hear that and think, how do you ensure that there's good quality in the writing? Can you speak to
The
that?
Yes, the good quality comes from the scaffolding. So I'm put a lot of work in the scaffolding of my courses so that students are completing activities that help them reach to the assignments, and they're completing the assignment piece by piece. And some of the activities ask them to revise specific parts of the assignments, apply strategies for revisions and editing, so that by the time they get to the final product at the end, they're doing well because they've put so much work into the scaffolding activities. So that's how I ensure a quality of final product.
I think some others might hear that and say, how do you ensure that students are motivated? Because traditionally they're motivated by the reward of good grades and conversely the punishment of bad grades. So how do you keep them motivated in that system?
Most of my students are from STEM fields, and they come to the class extremely stressed out about grades because they want to go to grad school, and so they want an A, but they're terrified of writing and they think this class is going to destroy the GPA. So they usually welcome contract grading very enthusiastically because it allows them to just do the work, which they're good at. They're students who are very focused, and they'll do what you want them to do without having to worry about the grade. They say that in the feedback that I get, they say that they're very engaged with the class because they can forget about grades, because they can just try things that they've never tried before in writing. They can take risks. They can, yeah, take risks. I think is one of the most important one that they do. So I haven't noticed disengaged students.
Do you, there's lots of different kinds of what I call non-traditional grading. There's labor-based grading contracts, there's Peter Elbow grading contracts, there's ungrading, there's specifications grading. Do you have a name for your kind of grading?
Yes. So what I've been using for most of the time is ENOIS contract, so labor grading contract.
Okay. How has your non-traditional grading evolved over time? Have you made any changes or what's that look like?
So the first contract I've used was Elbow and Danielowitz because I wanted to shift away from grading. I was tired of discussing grades with my students. I felt like that's all I did was explain my grading of their assignments, and I didn't want to do that anymore. So I switched to Elbow and Danielowitz, which allows contracts to look for labor up to a B, and then between the B and the A, that's the quality of the writing, and that's just the instructors who decides the grade. I used that 1 year and then I stopped it because again, I was talking about grades. Now it's only between the B and the A, but it was still there. So I switched to Inouye's labor contract. I've used that for the last 6 years at least in all of my classes. And I loved it for a while. And then it started breaking for me because it was a little bit it wasn't a perfect fit for my teaching style. And then the pandemic hit, which made it even worse because Inouye's contract says, here's the work, you have to submit the work on time. You can have 3 that are late. You cannot have missing work. If the work is missing, you have to complete it. It's still very strict in terms of behaviors of what the students need to do. And so the students were emailing me about emergencies and that I only have 3 that I can miss. And all of a sudden I was breaking the contract all the time. I said, don't worry about it, right? And so it became unsustainable. I had a contract that didn't match how I was teaching. So I've changed it. And now I'm using a contract that's similar to Inouye's, but it uses words like regularly submits on time, regularly attends class. And I tell them it's vague on purpose because I want them to be able to exist in different ways in the classroom. And that has worked well. I've used it for last quarter in the spring. I like it better. I am ready to let go of contracts though and go fully into ungrading.
What does that mean? What does that mean to go fully ungrading?
So ungrading is when the students give themselves their grades.
Oh,
And
yes.
so what I want to do is to give them a list of things. Here are the things that need to happen. Here are some options of how those things could happen. Make it happen. And then as they make it happen, they would click on checks, and those checks automatically gives them points.
Nice.
Yeah.
Would there be that sounds like a conversation, like an ongoing conversation or an ongoing negotiation between you and the student.
Yes. Yes. Which is again a nice feature of any alternative grading is that you're talking about the class and the stuff that's usually hidden from the students. It becomes a conversation with them. So it's really nice to center yourself and empower them in the conversation.
Great. Well, thank you so much for meeting with me. I have one more question. Um, what advice do you have for faculty who are curious about getting into some type of non-traditional grading?
I would recommend using contracts that already exist, that have been tested by others. So Elba and Yanilowitz, Inouye's, those contracts work, right? So I would start there, figure out what you like and don't like about them as you use them, and then either make changes to them or create your own contract. And then be prepared that this is going to be ongoing, probably for the rest of your teaching life. I find that I'm constantly rethinking how I teach and how I do things because of my assessment. It's a great professional development tool for rethinking constantly and having very good answers for why you do the things you do because you've put so much thought on it. So it's a long game.
I thought of one more question. Would you ever go back to traditional grading? Why or why not?
I would never go back to traditional grading unless forced, but yeah, I would really fight it. I completely stopped believing in grades. I just really do not believe in them. I see my class as pass, no pass. Pass is the A, and no pass is everything else.
Hmm.
I want all of my students to pass and get the A because it's the only grade that makes sense. Anything else is very strange to me and has become completely dissociated with how I teach. Yeah, so I'm not going back.
If you don't believe in grades, then what do you believe in the classroom with your students?
I believe in the process that the students engage in. Like I said, I put so much work in the scaffolding, and the students are really doing a lot of different strategy and practicing things. The process aspect, the working and taking risk and failing. My students sometimes try stuff that completely fails. They'll still get an A because in that failure is the learning, right? And so it's a completely different classroom than what I was doing. Traditional grading has changed everything, like a domino effect.
Well, it sounds like you're really passionate about your students, and so thanks for everything you're doing, and thanks for meeting with me and sharing your insights with us over here at Colorado State.
Absolutely, my pleasure.
Okay, thank you.